As we get closer to some of the top 2025 recruits making their decisions, bad news could be on the way.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, it's the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, thank you so much for being here and truly making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. I appreciate you, man. Shout out to all my everydayers, those of you that are back Monday through Friday on the Locked On Hoosiers YouTube channel or on your audio platforms, taking in and making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. Well, as we get closer and closer to the college basketball season, we now have a preseason top 25 in the AP poll. Have that for you a little bit later in the show. Plus, is the Big Ten good, or do we just not know a whole lot about what this conference is going to be? We'll talk about that in the final segment of today's show as well. And as we get closer to the start of basketball season, that also means we get closer to a lot of the top 2025 recruits making their decisions. And there are a lot of people, fans and media and outside folks who don't feel good about where Indiana sits right now. And what I mean by that is this. We know that we are in for a couple of big name players after we've missed out on a couple of big name players in the 2025 recruiting class. Let's start here, okay? Let's start with the fact that we were in and going after some of the biggest and best players in the country, right? We were going after some of the biggest, and we just didn't get there. Malachi Marino goes to Kentucky. Jalen Harrelson goes to Notre Dame. Okay, it happens. You do get Trent Sisley, though, who is a top 75 player. So you've got that fish in the boat. But we've still been going after Braylon Mullins. We're going after Eric Reibe, Michael Brown, Nate Mint, right? All these players in the 2025 class, we've still been going after. And I still believe we're alive in a couple of these battles. But there are people who are starting to check out on this and believe that, no, Indiana's not. And a couple of those that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about all of them. But we'll start with Braylon Mullins. We'll start with Braylon Mullins, who commits on Wednesday of next week, right? On the 23rd of October. He will be committing via the 24/7 Sports channel on YouTube. And it seems to be like it's down to Indiana and UConn. I got North Carolina people in the comments on YouTube who were all fired up and upset at me because I said North Carolina doesn't have a chance. I'm telling you, North Carolina doesn't have a chance. So just believe me on this. But Braylon seems to be down to Indiana and UConn. And I think if you've been able to pick up on this over the last couple of weeks that we've talked about this, UConn has still been the team to beat. That's not a secret here, that they've been the team to beat based off of what they've done in the past, what they've sold him on, and Indiana basically trying to play catch up here. But I don't believe we are fully out of it yet. And we still have over a week to go. So I'm not telling you to fold, it basically is what I'm saying. Don't do that yet. Because I still believe that Indiana can make this happen. And I told you on the episode on Friday, which you guys loved, by the way, I told you on Friday, crank up the heat, do whatever you got to do, go get this kid. And I still believe that to be true. I just don't know what that looks like. But I'm not a coach, and that's not my job. That's their job to figure it out if you're Mike Woodson and Indiana basketball. So in terms of Braylon Mullins, that saga still continues. We still have over a week to see how that plays out. Eric Reibe is another one that the tides have begun have started to shift a little bit. And it feels that Indiana might be slipping away on this one. But I'm not so sure because Indiana still has a really, really good selling point of be the next great big, be the next great Indiana center, and we're going to put you in the NBA. That's what Indiana has to continue to preach to him. And he commits tomorrow, as in tomorrow, Wednesday, and he's doing it live on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel as well. And there are several schools that he is down to, Indiana being one of them, UConn being one of them, and a couple of others. And I think it's us two right in there in that mix. And here's what can't happen here. Here's what can't happen. Indiana cannot let UConn out-recruit you for everybody that you want. Are they capable of doing that? You better believe it. You better believe they can. They're very capable of doing that. But remember, this is that moment in time where Indiana has a chance to change that narrative, to get over that barrier, that wall, that hump that we've seemed to be stuck behind since the 90s and figure it out in this century. Since 2002, right? There hasn't been what we've wanted for Indiana basketball in terms of results, high-level recruiting consistently, I think. And maybe that's the big word is consistency here. But it seems like people are starting to turn away from Braylon, Mullins, and Eric Reibe because other people are saying it's not going well. I'm not there yet. I'm just telling you, I'm not there yet. And they're not the only ones that Indiana's after. Don't forget about Nate Ament. Don't forget about Michael Brown. Don't forget about Bryson Tiller. Indiana's still going after all these kids. And Michael Brown's the best point guard in the country. I believe that, or one of anyway. He is a really, really good player. Really looked well this weekend. And they're saying he's gotten even better since the last time people have saw him. So Indiana still has bobbers in the water here, folks. We've still got opportunities out there. But people are starting to talk a little bit that bad news could be on the way. And I just hope that's not the case because that's not what we need. Going into this upcoming season where the hype is unbelievable, we're about to get to that in just a second. That's not what we need because if recruiting doesn't work out in 2025 for this class and then the season doesn't work out the way that we're expecting it to, they're going to fire Woody. He's going to be gone. And the problem is, most of you would probably be okay with that. And I'm not saying that's a problem on you. I'm not saying that's a bad thing on you. I'm saying that's a bad spot to be if you're the Indiana Athletic Department, the college basketball program, the university, and you as the fans. That's not where you want to be. You don't want to be sitting around this basketball season just twiddling your thumbs and waiting for something bad to happen and say, oh, there it is. All right, time to go. That's a miserable way to live. That's a miserable way to be a fan. But I fear that that's where we're headed. I fear that that's where we're going as Indiana people. And man, I don't want to be there. I don't want to be there. So Woody, figure it out. Go get somebody's. Save your job. And do it right now. Coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll flip over to the AP poll side of things as Indiana did appear in the preseason top 25. Are they too high? Are they too low? Are they just right? We'll talk about that coming up next on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Roy. Hey, Hoosiers fans, it's time to recognize our Roy Player of the Week. So far this season, we've pulled over $10,000 to support players on Roy. Micro deposits lead to a massive change. With the Roy app, you can direct your support to athletes you love, ensuring that all the funds go to the specific player that you choose. Unlike collectives, you know exactly where your support is going. And you even receive exclusive content like personal videos and updates after the season. The best part, it's risk-free. If the athlete transfers or doesn't deliver the content, you get your money back. And this week, since since Indiana was on a bye, I'm supporting Dillon Gabriel. Yes, the quarterback at Oregon who took down the Buckeyes on Saturday night in Eugene. I just pitched in $100, and I'd love for you to join me. And next week, we'll have more Indiana folks, so keep that in mind as well. Even $10 makes a difference. Let's show Dillon Gabriel and our future Hoosier Players of the Week the love and keep him connected to our school. Remember, pay today, celebrate tomorrow. Your support sets your team up for success. Plus, don't miss out on Roy's exciting giveaway. Win 2 tickets to a game in November. Just download Roy, create an account, and enter the referral code Locked On, and you're entered. Already on Roy? Any contribution to an athlete's campaign also gets you entered automatically. No purchase necessary, void where prohibited. Download Roy now and join the NIL game with no subscriptions and no fees. And be sure to check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Roy_return on you for more info. Roy, support the players, change the game. Welcome back into Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much for being here again. Shout out to all of my everydayers for showing up each and every day and supporting this show as much as you guys do. It really is a blessing to have you. And this show is a lot of fun. And I hope you're enjoying that here each and every day, whether you're on the audio side of things, Spotify, oh goodness, Amazon, you've got Apple Music, whatever, Apple Podcasts, whatever audio platform you're on. I appreciate you being there. Be sure you follow us over there. Turn on your notifications. I don't want you to miss an episode now. All right, so be sure that you are taking that in. Also, for those of you on the YouTube side of things, there are 3 steps. You know them by now. Like the video. That way other people can see it. It shares it with the algorithm on YouTube, okay? Be sure you do that. Comment down below. Which recruit does Indiana get? Which ones do they get? I want to hear from you in the 2025 class. Which ones do we land? And then the best thing you can do is subscribe to the channel if you have not already. We're well on our way to 3,500 subscribers, okay? So be sure you become a part of that. Help me out. That tells me you're an everydayer and that you want to see more content right here on Locked On Hoosiers. Well, the Indiana Hoosiers are in the top 25 of the preseason AP poll. Had an episode yesterday talking about KenPom. When that came out, the AP poll had not yet been released, and here we go. Now we have the newest AP poll. And believe it or not, I know it's early, and I know that it's preseason, and we don't know anything about these teams, and all we know is what came back and what transfers came in and what high school recruits you have, right? We don't have any physical hard evidence yet. That's what preseason polls are about. And some of you may like them. Some of you may not. I don't know. I'm kind of indifferent. It's something. It's exciting. It gives me an idea of where everybody kind of stands going into the season. Do I put full stock into this and invest everything I have? No. And that's stupid to do. Like, let's just be real. Because of what I just told you, right? We don't know anything. We are taking total guesses here, and everything is going to change. Everything. And so you do have to look at this and just kind of say, okay, this is a starting point. This is sort of an idea on what could happen or what might happen this college basketball season. But here's what I do know. I do know that Indiana came in at 17th in the preseason top 25. This is a team that missed the NCAA tournament last year that's now previewing in the top 20 of the very next season. What that tells me, and this is stuff you already know, but it tells me we brought in a hell of a recruiting class in terms of the transfer portal. You bring in some young talent, and you retained a lot of your talent. Those 3 things is what Indiana did extremely well. Right? Those 3 things are what Indiana did very, very well. And because of that, the outside world is appreciating that. They are recognizing that we did what we needed to do in the offseason. We had to get better. And that's exactly what we did. You added Umar Ballo, a starting center. You added Miles Rice, a starting point guard. You added Cannon Carlisle, a starting shooting guard. You added 3 or 4 dudes on your bench from the transfer portal in terms of depth. You bring in a star-studded freshman once again. You're hopefully getting back a star-studded freshman who's yet to really touch the floor because of injuries. And not to mention, you retain your starting 3 and your starting 4, and you have a very, very experienced shooting guard sitting on the bench. Like, yeah, I have told you, Hoosier fans, this is a really good team. It's a very talented team. This should be a top 20, top 15, top 10 type of team. I've told you that. And we have more episodes coming up this week about expectations and what we should want and see from this team. But I think 17 is just right. I think it's just right on where this needs to be for now, because you look around the Big Ten, man, we're the second highest ranked team in the Big Ten in the AP Top 25. And here's what's a little concerning in terms as the conference as a whole, okay? Purdue is the highest ranked Big Ten team at 14. At 14. Then it's us at 17. Then it's UCLA at 22. And it's Rutgers at 25. That is concerning to me in terms of the conference, because this may be a hot take and some people may agree with this and some people don't, and that's fine. But for whatever basketball team you cheer for, us for Indiana, but I don't care if you're a Kentucky fan. I don't care if you're a Cincinnati fan. I don't care if you're an Oregon State basketball fan. It is best for your team, okay? It is best for your team and their long-term outcome and their long-term success. It's better for the conference that they play in to be an overall good conference. You want the Big Ten. If you're an Indiana fan, you want the Big Ten to be good, okay? You don't want it to be easy and a cakewalk and, oh, we're just looking for the most wins. No, that's not what we're looking for here, because wins don't mean anything if they're not against quality opponents, because that doesn't help you in March. Just ask Gonzaga. Ask them. Every single season, they play the University of San Francisco State Tech or School of Technology junior varsity team, okay? And they find out why that's not a good idea to do that time and time and time again. Sure, they've made some runs. They've never won anything, ever, because they don't play legitimate competition. They're trying to fix that, and I respect that. But for Indiana, you want the Big Ten to be good. You want all the big dogs to be good because you want to beat them, and that's going to make you better come the tournament time. Now, I will say this. There are 4 teams in the Big Ten inside that top 25. I mentioned it: Purdue, Indiana, UCLA, and Rutgers. There were a lot of teams that received votes that are on the outside looking in to the top 25. Illinois is the first team there. So Illinois, Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, just to name a few. That's 5. Okay, looking for any more. Wisconsin's on that list. That's 6. You have Maryland on there. They received a vote. So that's 7. Now, those last 2 are a little bit further down, but 7 teams received votes. So overall, 12 teams got recognized out of the Big Ten. That's pretty solid. Out of a new look 18-team league, that's pretty good. I'd like to see more of them be ranked. I'd like to see more of them get into the top 25 this season. I believe Michigan will. I believe Ohio State will. I believe Michigan State will. I believe that Illinois will. I think a lot of teams are going to be in this top 10 or top 25 because I think the Big Ten is going to be a pretty good conference. But what do you think? We'll talk about that coming up in our final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Final segment here of, today's episode. Oh, apologies about that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get in the hunch in the middle of the game, like I did last night during the Bills and Jets game, which ended up being a pretty good game, you can check out the latest stats, few live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Look, I sit here at my little home studio office, right? I got a TV over there in the side room. And so I keep the game on over there and I pull up FanDuel over here and I'm just scrolling, getting stats and looking at the plays and looking at different bets. I mean, that's what I do all the time. And Sundays, oh my gosh, I've got it pulled up nonstop on FanDuel.com. And right now you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com to get started today. Go to FanDuel.com. Now it's the final segment of Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you being here, sticking around and making this your go-to spot for all things Indiana athletics. If you're looking for your next watch, your next listen, go check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig Sheeman, an Indiana grad, by the way, does a wonderful job over there of covering all the biggest storylines around the Big Ten. Pretty football heavy right now, but he's transitioning into basketball as well because that season is right around the corner. So go tell Greg that I sent you. Check out his show. He does a wonderful job. He's the one who hosts our Big Ten squad shows on Thursdays. So be sure you go check him out. That is the Locked On Big Ten podcast, and tell him that Jacob from Locked On Hoosiers sent you, okay? All right, as we continue on here on the show, I was asking you there, is the Big Ten a good conference? Is it going to be a good conference this season in college basketball? And from the outside looking in, somebody would say, only 4 teams in the AP top 25? Yeah, you're not going to be good. Look at what the SEC did this top 25. Alabama's in there. Auburn's there. Tennessee, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Texas, Florida, Kentucky, Ole Miss. They got 9 teams in the preseason top 25 compared to just the 4 that we have. And so, sure, it's easy to say, Big Ten sucks. No, they're terrible. Nah, they're fine. Middle of the pack conference in college basketball. SEC's taking over. Don't count out the Big East. Hey, the Big 12 could be good. But I think we have something to prove this year. I really do. I feel like I say this all the time, but the Big Ten gets so disrespected because of the lack of success in the postseason, which is totally granted, right? It's totally understandable. Sure, we've had some teams make a run. Purdue's made some runs, right? You've had Michigan make some runs recently. I mean, there are teams who have done good things from the Big Ten. There just haven't been a lot of them at the same time. At the same time in the same year. We need a season, and this one very well could be it, where Indiana makes a run, UCLA makes a run. How cool would that be to see them get back into relevancy? They've done it here and there, right? They've had their hits here and there. I'm talking Indiana. I'm talking UCLA, Michigan State, Michigan. I'm talking a handful of Illinois, a handful of teams to get good and get hot and make a run at the end of the regular season and into the postseason. Because I think we do need to help out and rebuild our reputation a little bit as the Big Ten as a whole. I don't know. It's just how I feel. I think when talking to other fans about the Big Ten college basketball conference, they're just, they just kind of shrug it off. And that's not cool, man. That's not cool. And as I was telling you in the previous segment, for Indiana to be good, for us to reach our potential, we want other teams to be good, man. We want this conference to be the best in the country because that helps in terms of building your resume, good and bad. I mean, it helps you when you get a win, you get a big win. If you lose, okay, they'll look at it as a, quote, good loss. I hate that term. I think it's dumb, but you'll at least get some credit for it in terms of the NCAA tournament committee. And you get a lot of net ranking points and you get all sorts of stuff, those quad ones, quad twos, right? Got to get back into thinking about those things here as college basketball is right around the corner. So I don't know. That's the question. How good will the Big Ten be? this season? And I think the best way to ask you this question, okay, I'm going to ask you this. Drop your comments down and your answers in the YouTube comments below. How many teams make the NCAA tournament out of the Big Ten this upcoming season for 2024 and 2025? How many teams out of the Big Ten make it to the NCAA tournament? You have 18 teams now. Remember, UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington are all part of the Big Ten in terms of basketball as well. So how many teams do we make into the NCAA tournament? If you're basing it off of this, 12 teams got recognition in what would be considered, oh goodness, what is that? We'll say 50, just to make it easy, the top 50 of the AP poll. They're not all going to get in. You have all the other smaller schools, the automatic bids, things like that. My guess here, and this is straight shooting from the hip. I don't have it written down, didn't have this plan. This is straight from the hip. I'm going to say that the Big Ten gets 7 teams in. That's my prediction. 7 teams out of the Big Ten will make it to the big dance coming up in March. I think a combination of Purdue and Indiana, UCLA. If you haven't noticed, I love this Michigan and Ohio State teams. I really do. I think both of them are extremely talented. There's 5 for me. I'll put Rutgers in there at 6, and I'll put Illinois at 7. Sure, why not? That's my 7. I think we get 7 teams into the NCAA tournament out of the Big Ten. But regardless, as we wrap up here, Indiana needs this conference to be good. And there's a really good chance that we could be atop of this conference, which I want it to be better because I want that to look better. I don't want to be the best of a crappy conference. That doesn't do anything, right, Gonzaga? That doesn't do anything for you. I want to be the best of a really good conference. That needs to be the Big Ten this season. And we're going to find out really quickly, man. There's a lot of good teams and a lot of good games very early in this season. And it's right around the corner. How good can the Big Ten be? You got to let me know down in the YouTube comments. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you guys being here. It means the world to me. Be sure, if you're on YouTube, like the video, comment down below your thoughts on today's episode, your thoughts on the topics that we discussed, and be sure that you subscribe to the channel. That's the best way to help me out. It tells me that you want to be here and that you want to see more content on Locked On Hoosiers. And for all my audio listeners, be sure that you follow us there and turn on notifications as well. We're back tomorrow, okay, Hoosier fans? So until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.